Welcome to PNSQC's May 5th meetup and seminar. I welcome you all. And my name is Bhushan Gupta. I'm on the board of PNSQC. And I'd like to thank NIC and Tyler to sponsor the event today. Just to let you know about PNSQC a little bit, we are about 40 years old organization. We put a huge show together in October, every October. Our conference is very widely known, very well attended, but mostly we are international. We get people from everywhere. But this year, it's a special year for us. We'll be celebrating 40th anniversary for us. And we are putting together a wonderful program. And I encourage you to go online and try to find us out on pnsqc.org. You will find a lot of things. I'm very proud to say that we are all volunteers in PNSQC. We have passion for software quality and we do things to educate people of software quality. So there's a perfect opportunity for you to get involved and be part of this. With that, I'd like to invite Inky to introduce our speakers this afternoon.
Thank you, Bhushan. I am with the State of Oregon's Enterprise Information Services, which is the Office of the State CIO. I am also on the board of the Pacific Northwest Software Quality Conference. As Jack was saying, as Bhushan was saying, the organization is 40 years old, is an Oregon-based nonprofit. We rely heavily on volunteers. Anyone interested in submitting a paper for this year's conference in October and or looking for volunteer opportunities in terms of helping to review papers, if you want to do that, or to help in any capacity of PNSQC's event planning and coordination, please do get in touch with any one of the board members of the Pacific Northwest Software Quality Conference. My former manager called the PNSQC a hidden gem of Oregon high tech, and there's a lot of truth to that. Jack, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Kind of as a sort of keynote or kind of orientation before our speaker Wes begins his presentation, which the organization PNSQC as well as the State of Oregon, we'd like to extend our deep appreciation for Wes taking the time and even coming up from California to present this in person, and of course to all of you out in cyberspace. Now, the context I want to set is the kind of the modern enterprise that potentially have a lot of stored data. These data come in a lot of different forms. They may be operational databases. There may be historical data repositories in any number of platforms, whether it's data warehouse, data marts, and whatnot. We have legacy system, and as all of you that are familiar with government and large organizations, there may be a lot of shadow data sources, hidden on people's computers, whether it is spreadsheets to small access databases, all manners of stuff. There's significant value of this data. And how do you unlock this value is probably by bringing to bear a diverse set of tools. These tools involve ETL, which is extract, transform, load type tool that allow you to extract, transform, and load the data from proprietary databases and other sources into, say, data warehouses and Hypercube and other type of technology to support analysis. When it comes to analysis, there is sort of the run-of-the-mill business intelligence, where people are primarily concerned about reporting, dashboarding, and possibly web presentation. With that said, many organizations have a need for much deeper analysis. And this is typically in the domain of big data and data science. And these are, in fact, ways of just basically saying that you may have potentially very complex data. In order to perform the necessary analysis, you may need sophisticated tools. And these tools may range from in social science type field, SPSS, SAS. In scientific fields, it may be like your Mathematica and other types of tools. In the business environment, business objects, Informatica, these are the type of platforms that people might use to support complex statistical analysis of potentially very large data sets. So these then become the ecosystem within which one is trying to extract business values. What are these business values? Certainly there's decision support of management of an organization, but increasingly new business logic and algorithms that adjust itself based on dynamic behavior of the user community. And many of those are based on trained algorithms using data sets of all sorts, but also the use of predictive analytics to help operation management make real-time or possibly periodic adjustment to their operational approaches and models. So these together constitute important value to modern software, and they tie very much to proprietary and increasingly important open data sets, open data catalogs, and open data portals. I'm happy to say that our Chief Data Officer for the state of Oregon is running a program that try to make the state of Oregon data more accessible and to also make internal data sets more shareable and discoverable across state agencies. These are among what I consider to be the new software environment of today. Next slide, please. So we'll take a look at kind of what I call enterprise data management and analytics. It's a rapidly evolving field. And so the context is very much diverse internal and external data sets, integrated tools. So somebody can go to one place and have access to all the ETL tools, analysis tools, etc. And the idea is that one can then enable dynamic allocation of resources that is appropriate to your problem at hand, possibly in an elastic cloud type infrastructure. So you get the necessary computing resources you need in order to support the needs of quantitative analysts and data scientists, as well as just regular business analysts needing reporting and other needs. So, the future, I believe, is very much about leveraging proprietary as well as public data sets for a range of applications that support decisions, identify new business logic and therefore new software capabilities, and then not the least is trained algorithms that can leverages the power of artificial intelligence and other types of new tech. So with that in mind, I now introduce our speaker, Wes from Tyler, which is an important player in open and private portals for data management.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to NIC and the Pacific Northwest Software Quality Association for inviting me up here, out of frame. Thanks, Ying. Thank you for the introduction to Ying. So today, it's a different kind of adrenaline. I don't think I've been in front of people, this many people in so long, especially presenting. So yeah, thank you, Christopher. Thank you for that. So today, as Ying introduced, we're going to talk about data portals. I fit this into pop culture. So data portals are how I learned to stop worrying and love data. I'm a cadence man. So you want to move to the next slide? As Ying said, my name is Wesley Hill, and I'm a solutions engineer at the Data and Insights Division of Tyler Technologies. I have been with the division since late 2019, worked with our clients, Catherine and the state of Oregon, the city and county of San Francisco, folks along the West Coast in my portfolio. Prior to that, I worked for local government, 13 plus years in IT for the county of Marin. Worked in a lot of software quality operations there, started off with quality assurance, worked through engineering, worked on case management systems for our justice folks. built food inspection tracking applications or reporting tools for our EHS folks. So a long history in government, but eventually that led me to the digital solutions portfolio, where I managed our web applications, data, GIS, and so on. So this is a topic that's close to my heart. You want to move to the next slide? So just a little bit about Tyler before we jump in. Tyler is the largest public sector focused IT company. We have over 300 installations just in the state of Oregon alone. There is data all around you. Our mission is to help you transform your operations by building connected communities. And part of that, we're going to talk about how you do that with data today. Okay, so one of the installations that we have, as Ying mentioned, is your open data portal. To focus on the data portal topic, I thought we'd start with open data, explain some of the tenets that came out of the open data movement, and then we expand into some of those internal functions and how we enable analysis through that. Okay, so let's rewind a bit. The year was 2008, and this young upstart from Chicago was running for office. And he wanted to be absolutely transparent with the way that he was sharing his campaign finance data. He could have done what everyone used to do, which is, I mean, some people still do, is extract that data from a source system to then save that as an Excel file, to then upload it to some file structure on his website. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to embrace what was happening in the late 2000s. There was a confluence of cloud computing, functional modern web browsers that were able to support independent analysis of the data. So embrace new modern tools to put that data online. There was an application called Blist, then became Socrata, then became the Tyler Technologies Data and Insights platform. That's where our journey in open data and data portals began. We weren't the only player. Office 365, Google Suite, all of this was happening at that time that allowed for this sort of data to be explored in the browser, meeting your audience where they were at. So in starting off with this campaign finance data, they were able to put that on their campaign website, allowing people to visualize and work through that data as they saw fit. Maybe they just wanted to filter to donations coming from California. Maybe they just wanted to filter from Massachusetts. But the ability to have independent exploration of the data in the browser versus having to take that offline through Excel. The Obama administration carried that forward with when they were in the White House with the White House Visitor Log. That was actually a data set that was published as open data as well. And that actually led to the creation of data.gov, which is the federal government's open data presence, where they're aggregating data from all of the federal divisions in one place in a catalog that people can discover data independently. So out of that, next slide, came a couple of core tenets around what a data portal should be. And I want to focus on these three topics first around access, interpretation, and then application of data. So access can be stated as getting the right data to the right people. Interpretation is meeting folks where they're at with data. Not everyone has the ability to analyze a 2 million row spreadsheet. So could we provide some sort of context and analysis through modern tools that would allow them to work with that data within their skill set? Application is, now that we're going through this effort to make this data public and in a transparent way, can we drive reuse of the data rather than making something static? So how could we use API infrastructure to enable more use of the data itself? So I spent most of my pandemic time fully embracing my ability to cook foods. So there's going to be a lot of metaphors around cooking for the next segment of the presentation, so bear with me. So I'm calling these data portal ingredients. All right, so let's dive into access and what that means. Getting the right data to the right people. So what does it mean to get to the right data? It truly means about unlocking those source systems. Just like Ying said, you have all these operational databases, you have all these operational tools. how do we get that data out of your source system so that you can exchange with your coworkers, with other agencies, with the public, if that's your choice there. So it's truly about embracing a modern API ecosystem to get data out of your source systems. So data platforms are enabled with API infrastructure to publish data, to work with your other systems so that you can program around these endpoints to extract data from your source systems and then get it into the cloud space where you can utilize that in a broader capacity. The data portal infrastructure embraces ETL tools, the extract, transform, and load, which is essentially a wrapper around those APIs in a more consumer-centric way. You've got tools like FME, Pentaho, Talend, but it's basically allowing you to connect your source systems with the cloud in a more consumer-driven way. To the right people, that's where we are focusing on sharing data in a different way. If the Obama administration had taken that data, published it on their website, some sort of file share path, there's kind of a guided way in which you'd be exploring information. But the data portal paradigm is shifting that into taking the data itself, the metadata around the data, the title, description, who uploaded it, update frequency, what department, who's providing it, and putting that into an indexable catalog so that you can allow self-service discovery. So no longer do you have to care about how to guide people to it. How would you know for all the data that you're publishing? It's simply about building an index so that people can discover the means that are important to them. And then once they find that data, how do they know it's the proper resource for them? So having the ability to quickly preview that data, having the ability to filter that, just like we talked about with those campaign finances. So the other core tenet of open data is interpretation. So in one platform, can we provide the data, but can we also provide some context and the ability to understand that data in a way that meets our audience where they're at? Not everyone has access to the statistical analysis tools. Not everyone has access or a computer that can open a 200 million row data set. So can we use the cloud and a platform to provide more context and drive discussion around our data through representing it in different ways? For our campaign finance example, I could have put it on a map. It's probably not the best way to visualize it because there'd be a ton of data points. Maybe I want to rank states by contributions. Here on the screen, I have a capture of Ramsey County out of Minnesota. This is their COVID-19 situational dashboard. And on that dashboard, they provide a ton of context to showcase how we're doing with pandemic response. And immediately I can see that we had a really, really bad time. We slightly rebounded. And now based on the analysis of this wastewater, we're still not out of dodge when it comes to the pandemic. So as a human being, I can immediately understand that. But on the same platform, I can get back to the source data if I want to analyze that more. And then that last tenet of open data is application. So just as I was able to get the data onto my data platform through an API ecosystem, how can I drive reuse through an API ecosystem? How can I interact with those statistical analysis tools, your Power BI, your Tableau, and provide a means for people to dive into that data beyond what's available on my portal, my platform that's serving it to them. And then also, how can I connect it to other data portals and drive reuse of data? Not everyone understands every element of government, and sometimes they'll think a city is providing them a service when it's actually a county. So how can we take that pain away from our audience? They don't have to know to go to the right source. They can go to a global index where I'm aggregating these data sets together. Through that metadata, I'm providing a means to discover it, and then I'm providing a means to access it or reuse it in one space. All right, so we're ready to eat, right? We've done this, we've freed all of our data, we're ready to dive into our meal. Not quite yet. We actually forgot to season our food, and let's talk about how we've failed a little bit in that open data movement. So, freeing your data from your source systems is extremely hard. If we think about data portals as just a transparency lens, we suffer from not changing the behavior of how we're operating as organizations. We didn't change how we're sharing information necessarily. We could be still sending files through email. We could still have all these data silos, and then people aren't necessarily willing to exchange everything because they lack governance in a completely open system. So how can we embrace some of the challenge? How can we solve some of those challenges through getting lower in our tech stack? At the same time, your data management issues are growing all the time. Just thinking about the pandemic and how we all shifted to a remote posture. We're no longer meeting in person, writing down notes. We have all these new digital tools. We're just producing countless amounts of data. So all those 300 systems, that's just the cracking into all the systems that we have and all the data that we're producing. So if we were to take some of these tenets about access, discovery, application, integration, interpretation, if we were to move them lower in our tech stack, could we benefit from a data portal helping our operations internally, and then maybe having that the byproduct of that being transparency? So let's dive into that a little bit. So when I talk about getting lower in the stack, I'm talking about your technology stack. So here, this is a reporting infrastructure for one of our clients that we've obfuscated. So you can see all the data sources on the far left here. You can see an integration layer, you can see a storage layer, and you can see a reporting layer. What if you were able to take a platform and containerize the integration, storage, and reporting layers of this infrastructure? You're getting as close as you can to that source data, and you're enabling these functions in one platform. You're taking away a lot of the burden of integration and putting it closer to the data source. So moving from being a reporting or content distribution layer to being a system integration layer, moving from reporting to actually building around this data infrastructure, and moving from compliance to being a specification that you design around. So turning your core data into an asset that you're enabling your organization around through a portal. So let's talk about some of the seasoning that we're going to add to our pho here, our data pho. All right. So as I mentioned, one of the biggest challenges with the whole open data movement, data portals as they were known, is governance. People are, they're a bit cautious of sharing when they don't have the ability to control how far and wide that spreads, how it's going to be interpreted, how it's going to be used. So one of the first things that we have to do is we got to be less open, actually, less open in a structured way. So putting controls around access. Perhaps I have a data set and I want to share it with Jack here, and then I want to share it with a larger organization. And Suzanne here has her own assets that she's sharing with her own team and working. And there's this organizational hierarchy of expanding privileges that we have to put into our portal structure. So modern data portals have that governance in place to expand your audience and control who can access your data. And as we move lower in the stack as well, it's no longer something that we've prepared for reporting out. We have things that are highly secure, highly confidential. It's no longer just meant for a public audience. So how do we control the security rights of our data when we're talking about moving data portals lower in the stack? So being able to restrict assets to certain individual data structures, being able to restrict by column, being able to restrict by row, perhaps having a data set that is available for an epidemiologist with some sort of identifier, but then an aggregate that is available for a larger public health department, so they can't see the same information, but all that data is built on each other. So being able to build assets on top of each other in your portal. We also have to focus on the what you can do in a platform. When we talk about portals in the open data space, the role structure doesn't necessarily correlate with the means of internal organizations. So being able to have nuanced control over, you can publish, you can't publish, you can publish to this audience, you cannot publish to this audience, who can create new accounts, who can control who's getting what permission set. So adding some of that governance structure into the what you can do in the portal space. And then the last part of governance is how you effectively track and document all that so you can be accountable to your organization. So having proper ways to view the what is happening in your application, who's doing what, logging, and being able to control data flows. Okay. There's also, I really like this. This is someone in our education team describes metadata as your love letter to the future, which I really enjoy because it is, documenting what you know now so that you can move on to something else and you can always understand what you're working with. So when we talk about metadata, we're talking about understanding the context of what you're putting into the shared portal space so that others can use it. Proper classification of categories, tags, descriptions, creating custom metadata to log facets that are important to you. Who owns this asset? How often it's getting updated? Even if all this metadata documentation exists, and I still don't understand it, at least those attributes about who owns it, who's responsible for it, can help me get to the proper source if I need to ask more questions. So contextualizing your data through complete metadata allows you to enable a portal in the internal space so that people can understand and search for your data, discover it independently. With that comes the need to adhere to compliance standards as part of the state of Oregon's data strategy. There are metadata standards that have to be enforced. So having the ability through your platform to make sure that that metadata is getting input and contextualizing your data is a key success point for the data portal space. And then being able to audit that when you're out of compliance and remediate. And then if we're going to move our data portal lower in the stack, how do we accomplish some of those functions that we were doing in our integration layer? So how do we allow data to be joined and connected and shaped and aggregated so that we don't necessarily have to start with that report that was developed for transparency? We can actually use the data portal as an internal tool to build connections, to build new work product, and to expand our understanding of our organization's data. Lastly, it's not just about our API ecosystem to ingest or work with data. It's also about a full API ecosystem to control your data platform, to permission, to add users, to do all those functions that are needed to control your data portal. And then using that infrastructure to work with other data elements that you have in your ecosystem. Ying, you mentioned data lakes and data warehouses. So being able to exchange data back and forth between an unstructured lake to a structured portal and back and forth is a key element of moving that lower in the stack. All right, so we talked high level, what the tenets of data portals started off as, how we expanded that to move into being able to control your data in an internal capacity and an enterprise capacity. And now we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that at the Data and Insights division. We have a tool called Informatics. There's this term in software, dog fooding. This is us dog fooding our own product. So yeah, thanks, Christopher. I guess in the analogy of cooking, I shouldn't be talking about dog food, but here we are. We have a tool that we call Informatics. It's a version of our internal enterprise data platform. And we run our operations on a lot of common software that I'm sure all of you are using. Workfront for project management, Zendesk for handling support tickets and our knowledge base. We have a CRM that's tracking opportunities. We have our giant AWS ecosystem where we're getting all that web server log data. And we are using our core APIs to access that and ingest it into a shared space where not only do we use this for functional means, like we have teams, you can see interactive reporting team, they're monitoring their operations. Maybe we have a product development team that launched a new feature and they want to see how that's being adopted in the space. They can build a dashboard with this tool to monitor the adoption of that software feature. Maybe they're planning for the deprecation of a feature and they're trying to find where folks are still using that. So by piping all this data together, we're able to build these insights. Perhaps we have our education team just wanting to check completion of courses and see how people are doing in training on the platform. So there's a lot of structured means, but then there's also unstructured means in that by having this all accessible, any individual with access to this in our company can then go in here and query for whatever they want. By having the strong data governance around this, metadata that allows us to discover and search for assets, individuals can build their own insights in here. I have used this tool to go out and search for individuals in our client space that are using our geospatial features. And then I've sought to understand how they're using our multi-layered maps. And by having all this data together, I didn't have to ask an engineer to go find that for me. I could do self-service and build that insight myself and then act on that. So that's part of the promise of moving your data lower in the stack, enabling people to do that self-service discovery and then to take actions on that data themselves. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about data portal application in the government space, which is predominantly our clientele. So one of our clients is the Commonwealth of Virginia. And just like most of America, I mean, the world, opioids are epidemic in the Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth of Virginia sought to use data as a means to make their response better. It's not that they weren't responding to the challenge, but there were disconnects in the data exchange, and they wanted to centralize data in a data portal where they could work with hospitals, law enforcement, nonprofits. So how could they connect all these people together in a controlled, governed way? So the data portal was the means in which they sought to do this. They partnered with a vendor, Clarion, and they built on top of the Tyler Technologies enterprise data platform to build this infrastructure out where they could have access to key systems, govern those assets, provide discoverability of those assets, and then let folks build these analytic layers to understand how they could improve outcomes in the Commonwealth. On the left, you'll see one of their dashboards that they built around overdose tracking. That's done in Power BI. So providing access to the data was one thing, but then using the API infrastructure that you have through a portal to then take that insight and build it into another lens. So that's led to better outcomes for people suffering from opioid addiction in the Commonwealth of Virginia. They then were able to capitalize on that infrastructure that they built around opioids and just repurpose it. By building all these policies, these governance documents, they're able to shift focus pretty rapidly. So this effort around opioids was done prior to the pandemic, but by having all this in place and having somewhere to go, they're able to expand to the next thing, which just so happened to be the COVID-19 pandemic. So being able to expand on top of the great efforts that they built, and then add more data to the catalog to be able to focus on another issue that they needed to exchange around. So on the topic of the pandemic, I want to talk a little bit about the city and county of San Francisco and how they structured their infrastructure to work on pandemic response. So they had quite a few systems that were reporting on vaccines, PPE, transmission rates, and they had some brittle ways in which they were exchanging this information, and they needed a centralized source to start engaging with each other about how they were managing PPE, how they were going to plan for their HR resources if someone actually at the city and county got sick. Like, how are they going to structure their own workforce? So they actually used a data portal with a data lake to accomplish some of this analysis. So the data lake was the place where they put all that unstructured data. So maybe 5 or 6 systems that were tracking PPE, throwing it into a data lake and being able to use the data lake for rapid analysis and modeling around the data, but then being able to work with the API ecosystem to push that to a portal where it could be easier accessible by folks that didn't have necessarily the technical chops to work with that unstructured data or those unmaterialized data models. So by using each platform for its best intent, they were able to then provide a wider understanding through the data portal, freeing up bona fide assets that had been approved to a wider audience of citywide resources, all working on PPE distribution or vaccinations across the city. They were then able to use the API ecosystem of the data portal to build out analysis layers that still go on their city website today. If you go to the city's website, you'll see some of the Power BI product that they built from this workflow, still available on their website. And then, as with the Commonwealth of Virginia, all of this data is continuing to build, all of this process rather, is continuing to build on itself. And they're working on now improving the transparency of police calls through the same process, putting it into a data lake, modeling and cleaning, publishing approved assets to a data portal, allowing that discovery and building analytic layers on top. Next, I want to talk about the National Health IT Collaborative for the Underserved. This is a nonprofit out of DC, and their mission is to reduce the disparities in health outcomes for the underserved. I put their mission statement up here actually, and they talk about a data fusion center, public-private initiative to tackle intergovernmental data challenges and translate social determinants of health data into actual insights. So it's a pretty lofty goal. And this organization aims to build that public-private partnership around a data portal. So they, as a nonprofit, are building out this enterprise catalog of resources that are valuable for insight into social determinants of health. And they're inviting other nonprofits, other governmental agencies to contribute data to what they're calling a fusion center. And then they're partnering with for-profit industries to do some of the analysis in the same space. So by having a shared ecosystem with clear documentation, clear metadata, understood APIs, they're able to unleash private sector analysis for public good through the data portal. This is just starting off. I think they partnered with Stony Brook University, and there's a nonprofit, Hims and Hers, in there, or a for-profit Hims and Hers in there. But I know yesterday, maybe the day before, they presented at AWS Connect. So that I'm sure will be online too if you're interested more about how this is shaping up. Moving on, another health use case around data portal application. This is the Federal Health and Human Services, who is using a data portal with their CRM and cloud computing technologies to provide analysis pathways for authorized data access. So they are using a data portal as the giant store of all of their structured data. And they're using that for its governance, for its ingestion of data, for its federation, for its import export. When it comes to the front end, they're actually building a front end in their CRM, Salesforce. This is a common way that people at HHS are accessing information. So they're meeting their audience where they're at and using API infrastructure on top of that to enable folks to get access to the data. So the CRM allows them to have a front end where there's a clear process around discovering assets, but then requesting access to the asset and actually building out data use agreements in the CRM tool, which would then use APIs if they're agreed to. So there's an approval flow around the data use agreements. And then if they are approved, the API infrastructure will provide asset to that, to the access to the asset that they requested. And that's all served up through the CRM front end. Once they get access to that data set, they're actually using cloud computing technologies to enable instant analysis of that data. So a couple AWS workstations will then be able to be launched from the same thing, where they can have access through the APIs and load that instantly into a workstation with SAS, with Power BI, with all the tools that they need to instantly work with that data set. And then I wanted to talk about the city of Chicago, who's diving into the data science space around data portals. City of Chicago has a strong open data program, but they go full force into promoting reuse of their data for application development and citizen engagement, catalyzing commercial activity. If you go to their data portal, there's a link to a developer portal, which is pretty full of interesting content, how to work with their APIs, how to not only interact with their data portal, but every system that they have, their 311, their buses, how to use these tools together. They're providing guidance to the city to fully capitalize on these resources. What you see on the screen is they did an analysis with some of their partners. So this is also public, private, where it was the Innovation and Technology Department, Department of Public Health, but also Allstate Insurance and a Civic Consulting Alliance worked on an effort to take some of their inspection data, their restaurant licensing data, even weather trends to build a predictive model for how they could operate food inspections, restaurant inspections better. Chicago has way more restaurants than it does food inspectors. So how could they use data science to better target likely restaurants that had likely violations versus those that would not, or going grid by grid? How could they be smarter about triaging their resources? And they did that with the use of a data portal and then data science on top of that portal. So, I hope what we've covered here today is an analysis of what a data portal is, some of the core tenets that you can get from use of a data portal, and then how you can connect that to other infrastructure elements inside your stack to best use your data for operational success. So thank you for inviting me to speak today.
Thank you very much, Wes. We now enter the part of the event would be open questions and answers. Let me first invite questions from the floor of the folks that are physically present in Salem. Questions from the floor? Let's go about it.
Ying, there is a question from John in the chat.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. The question from the floor is how would Tyler's team handle data normalization?
So data normalization is usually done off platform. It could be done in one of those other architecture elements you have, like a data lake or something like that. That's more of what, sorry, let me step into the spotlight. Love the spotlight. The normalization taken account like the San Francisco example. Yeah. So that's what they did. So all these PPE data sets, they're disparate, they're not structured with the same schema, building a model using technologies like DBT to do that implementation with unmaterialized views, then calling that view for something that's distributable to a wider audience. So that's what they would do.
Ushan?
This is a huge process where you're doing some data mining, various data points or storages, and then you're bringing that to the portal. I was just wondering whether the software technology challenges you come across.
So in this huge process of taking data from your source systems and then putting it into your portal with our customers or with regard to our own operations, what are some of the key challenges that we've had over that process? Is that accurate for your question? Yes. So I think one of the key challenges is understanding data structure and data access issues. Like I'm able to put it on one slide as if it's super easy to get from these API integrations, but getting data out of your source systems is often one of the hardest challenges, especially when you think about your tech stack and not everything that you have is API enabled, right? You've got legacy systems left and right. You have schemas that you don't necessarily understand. So access and understanding the data pipeline to get it to the cloud is one of the hardest challenges. Those silos also are very real when you're going through this effort, right? Just understanding the data that you have, the data that's available to you is one of the key challenges as well. I know Catherine and many others are going through a data inventory effort where it's just key to understand what's even available to you, because you've been running your operations in a way where things have been siloed for so long, you don't even know necessarily what's in those silos. So that's another key challenge, I would say.
I have a kind of a related question from a member of the PNSQC board. And the question would be along the line of how do you see this type of data portals and the use thereof affect the future of software quality?
Sure. Well, I think in my example of the informatics, how we use it, being able to take a lot of your logging data, access, logs from Splunk and ingest them into a centralized catalog. We monitor performance of our software through our own platform. So by getting access to that information that's about our development pipeline, putting it in the shared space, we're able to build analysis layers into how we're doing in being performant on our response times, or even like SLAs when it comes to responding to support tickets and things like that. By just collecting the data and being able to put it in this place where it can be discovered and connected, we're able to improve those operations.
Great. Jack, if I can trouble you to read that one question that's
what is the benefit of using these Tyler tools versus Tableau or Power BI that the state of Oregon already has access to?
We believe that we can all work together best. So the Tyler platform allows you to have access, discover, and then use the APIs You can do a lot of analysis on our platform. You can also take that analysis into the BI tool of your choice. That's one of the core tenets of the open data movement is interoperability. And I hope I shared that today. So there's a place for both worlds.
I have a question.
Sure.
For me personally. In preparing for today's event, I kind of looked through different companies' website as it relates to open data. The one from Microsoft sort of stuck in my mind in that they said, this is your key for accessing data from your internal as well as public sources to train your algorithms in AI and other applications. Can you comment on that?
On Microsoft's statement about training off open data, there has been a ton of reuse around open data. I mean, even vendors like Zillow and Yelp, you know, they mine catalogs to build intelligence off of that. So if I'm understanding your statement correctly, I think just the publication of data allows for unlimited reuse of the data. So you could build algorithms and models on top of that.
Are any of your customer and government applying this type of portal-based technology to train algorithms or otherwise apply techniques of artificial intelligence by leveraging these public data?
So the city of Chicago is a great example that we went over. There's more data science projects. I would encourage folks to go to their, I do not know it offhand, but if you go to their open data portal, there's a developer link and they have some machine learning examples of things that they're doing there.
I did look at the Chicago site and I think they have put some effort in leveraging the power of R to leverage data for application development. Any comments on the use of R or any tools that support third-party development?
Sure. I think what you see is by having well-documented APIs, people can build SDKs and reusable libraries in the languages of their choice. So if it's R, if it's Python, if it's C#, if it's JavaScript, by having API infrastructure that's well documented, you enable reuse in a kind of agnostic way.
Thank you.
I have another question. Came in from Moss. Okay, so the question is, I found that ELT, so extract load transform, not ETL, extract transform load, helps to track the metadata better. Doing the transformation in the database helps to track and archive changes. Do you have recommendations for metadata standards? And I think the question would also be, do you have thoughts on doing transformations in the database and to what degree can they be done in your tools, I guess?
Sure. On the metadata standard question, I think one of the great benefits of starting in the open data space and then translating data portals to enterprise operations is there is a lot of public content. Most people publish their metadata standards, which gives you a resource to go look and examine what was working for other organizations, and you could model your own after that. It is focusing on what is going to be valuable for you to do discovery around. So how do you want to classify things so that you can easily boost understanding, I think is the key tenet of the metadata there. But I would encourage a full review because this isn't necessarily a new concept. So there's a ton of good information out there on how to build a metadata standard and what folks are doing around it. When it comes to the transformation, the ELT, that's interesting for tracking the changes. I can see that as being effective. I think I'd have to work through that a little bit more in my own understanding to fully comment on it. But I could see it as being an effective way to do the transformations. As far as what you could do in our platform, we have in that one slide where I talked about getting lower in the stack in the integration layer, we have the ability to transform data on platform. I don't know how to detail the limits in response to this, but there's some documentation on our site. you could explore, but functional elements to transform data, to shape data, to join, to merge columns, to, I mean, there's a full library of application of functions you can do on the platform.
I have a question. So you detailed some of the examples from different government agencies and some of your tools.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what Tyler can provide in addition to the software platform? So we know the software platforms, you know, we have the open data, you have the more secure government side cloud. Forget the name.
Sure. Enterprise data.
Yeah, enterprise data platform. Thank you. Beyond that, do you typically provide support to get things sort of going, hooked up originally, you know, cron jobs, types of things?
Yeah, so we have a services team that can help, that is effective in enabling new platforms that help you with some of the data extraction, writing integrations. There's a full suite of services that are provided by our teams. But really, what we try to do is enable our clients to be successful on their own through understanding how to do all that stuff. We tend to offer services to do implementations, and then we really want you to be successful on your own.
Maybe on the lighter side, I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned some applications by nonprofits and government agencies that are serious use of government data asset to do very interesting things. I'm just wondering if there's some kind of more unexpected, interesting application of public data assets that you've come across that's worth mentioning.
I tend to see functional application of the data because I'm so tied to the clientele during these like implementations. I know that some people have reused data sets from like the city of Seattle around their pet adoptions and available pets. You know, like a pet finder. I think if you go to that Chicago link, there's actually a few things where they don't necessarily like the way that Chicago was portraying their restaurant inspection data, so building custom front ends around that sort of stuff. Actually, that might have been New York City that I'm thinking of right there. But it tends to be, I tend to see functional application, and I'm not sure I've been surprised in a novel way that I could share today, but it's a good question.
Great, great. Any more questions, either from our online audience or from this? Oh, there's one question in the back.
Yeah, I wasn't back out of this whole shit that in terms of kind of nonprofits, one of like sort of complications or conflict in terms of business here in terms of like the whole conversation of that change or is it something like individual like that?
So in that NHIT example, I believe there are data use agreements for getting into that space that speak to some of those challenges around that. Because if you're going to have this centralized space, there has to be an understanding around how that data is being used. You can also use functions. So outside governance, documenting that, having those agreements in place is essential. And then also using platform and other infrastructure tools to constrain access, what they see. So limiting it with software and limiting it with legal frameworks is the best combo.
Okay. Any more questions?
No, there was a question for you to share the links for the government
Sure.
websites in your presentation.
One thing we can do, PNSQC can do, is we can put up a blog for today's event with some additional sort of Q&A. If you have think of other questions, do send it to us. And then, of course, we can also use that blog to communicate information from our speaker, as well as you know, kind of additional information that may be useful in the state government context or other private sector contexts. Seeing that we don't have any additional information and our speaker need to get to the airport, I now turn the floor over to Bhushan for some final concluding remarks. And thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you. Thanks.
Thank you, Wes, for speaking to this meet today. I really appreciate it. I learned quite a bit. Let me put it this way. Now many times. So how is that? And I also want to thank Tyler and NIC for sponsoring us 3 times in a row. That's great. Wonderful. Thank you very much again. I just want to talk briefly about PNSQC and how you can help. And this is probably one of my best slides here. I have a couple more, not a whole lot here. So, like I said before, we have been in existence for the last 39 years. This is our 40th year, and you'll be surprised to know the people who started this organization. They came from Salem, if not Salem, Corvallis, exclusively Corvallis. There was somebody from OSU, another person from HP, and there were 2 people from HP. There were more persons. So it's like very homegrown organization. Most of the people who help out are local, so we are very, very local. And we really, like I said before, we are all volunteers. I did software engineering for 25 years. I shared my experiences with everybody else. This is the place where you can meet with like-minded people. You can be a speaker. There are other opportunities you can really help us. So let's go to the next slide, please. We just finished call for papers. We have we're planning to put together about 50 different papers, including keynote and invited speakers. Invited speakers are the people who are working in an area and they really want to share their experience at a deeper level. What we need at this point, we need reviewers. Every paper gets reviewed by 2 reviewers, so it's not like somebody just comes in and tells some warm fuzzy feelings. We are really into deep details. We want to make sure that the material being presented is really validated and it has value for the people. So we are looking for reviewers. There's no big requirement. If you are in management field, I think it would be good to contact. He is handling the management track, and we have testing track, we have process track, we have other concept like emerging concept track. So whatever it feels good to you, contact me, contact Nikki, and we will really put you to work. The benefit is that you get to attend the conference for free. Normally it costs you $1,000, but it's for free, and you're sitting with people you want to talk to, like-minded people. I see what else we have. Next time, going through this process, become an author, write a paper and become a speaker, and that's even more rewarding. I've done a few of those, and it's always a thrill to face people and learn their experiences, learn share your experiences. It's always a good feeling to be there presenting your ideas. We have room for program chairs, we have room for board members, any place you can help us. The organization would be great. So what else do we have here? And this is it. We will see you in October. If you can help us out, we will really appreciate it. You'll be one of us. You will know like-minded people, and you'll get to come to the conference for free. So Inky is the right person to contact. You can contact me either way. You can send a generic email at program@pnsqc.org. Just go to our website, which is pnsqc.org, and you can contact us.